Hey folks, this is Bailey from Dank Wargaming.
Hey, this is Heath with Team Table War Hawaii.
And welcome to The Path to Redemption, the Warhammer 40,000 Dark Angels podcast. On today's episode, we have a special guest, Charile. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Recently, at Lvo, you went 5-1 and placed 14th, and for the ITC 2021 season, you were the number one Dark Angels player in the world, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Yeah, we are super excited to have you here.
Super excited to be here. It's nice to talk Dark Angel with someone. It's not the most common army to run into, so it's kind of fun to talk to somebody else who has some interest.
Well, along those lines then, what drew you to the Dark Angels? How long have you been playing Dark Angels?
So I've been playing since about last January.
Okay.
I'm new to the 40K. I started last November-ish is when I started actually play. I think I played my first 2,000 point game in about September, and then was quickly playing in RTTs by about December. But I started playing them in January because my first army was CSM and Chaos Space Marines, and one of my friends is a Dark Angels player, and I was playing Obliterators into Dark Angels Terminators, and I was like, man, my 95-point Obliterators are doing absolutely nothing to these things. I'm going to try them out. So I tried out some Terminators, and I was like, well, I just want more Terminators, and I just kept doing that until I had an army of full Terminators.
I think that answers one of the questions I was going to ask you. Is like, well, I haven't really seen you play Ravenwing very much. And that's a good reason. So, well, I mean, that's an excellent success story. Like, you've been playing the army for just over a year, and you're the number one rated player in the world. So impressive. Congrats, man.
Thank you.
Well, I guess first of all, the first list I have for seeing you play was from Atlantic City, which was what, June? So
yep.
From Atlantic City to LVO, your list and your playstyle seems to have evolved significantly. Like, what's changed for you?
So in the very beginning, I started with a Terminator heavy build similar to what I ended with. That is not something that you guys would be able to find because I only played it at 1 GT. It was a local one. And that I played my full Terminators, and that was right as Drukhari were coming out for the first time. Like, it was very close to the initial release.
Yeah.
And I went 5-1 at that GT and lost to Drukhari, played by Ben, one of my friends, and was looking at the rules with Drukhari and kind of concluded that full Terminator spam cannot handle Drukhari. I responded to that by building a list that was 100% top to bottom built to counter Drukhari, and that would be the ACO list. And I only lost to Drukhari once or twice at that list because it was so tailored. And I took it to Atlantic City knowing liquefiers were out there, and it was just the peak point of Drukhari being awful. And the way the list worked is I had 10 Lightning Claw, Stormbolt, or Relic Terminators in the front that would get the -1 damage, and Drukhari really struggled, especially at that point in time, to get through it. And then I had Azrael and a bunch of other random assets behind him that were all kind of built together. They had to be infantry or bikes so that they would get a 4-up invuln, and that they could shoot on death from the Ancient. And basically it was just a whole pod walking forward with a 4-up invuln, shooting on death or fighting on death. And Drukhari really struggled to engage with that because if they tried to shoot at me, I would shoot back at them, and if they tried to attack me, they were bouncing off the -1 damage, and then I would clear them from there.
So,
keep going.
One of my experiences with that list is like I also played Drukhari, and Drukhari was my primary competitive army in 8th edition, and my experience that is like Witches just put out such a volume of 1 damage attacks at strength 4, like -1, maybe -2 with Blade Artists, that I would lose 5-man units of Terminators to them without that much trouble. How you just didn't have that in your meta? Like, was all the 2 damage liquefiers with +1 to wound?
It was in my meta. I definitely ran into that here and at ACO. Honestly, I just presented them with the 10-man Terminators, and they could charge me if I wanted to. If they didn't prevent my Overwatch, I'd Overwatch them. If they did prevent my Overwatch, I would eat it.
Okay.
And they would kill about 5 Terminators, but that's fine with me.
Sure.
The Witches if they're rerolling to wound, they are the best thing in the entire Drukhari army into my Terminators. When they have -1 damage, otherwise it's Incubi. But they would kill about 5. I would kill them all on death, either by shooting or fighting, depending on the situation, and then I would just keep moving. I had 1 or 2 players try charging everything into my army at once, and it just didn't go well because they would make mistakes, like leave a succubus without lookout surge, then they would shoot something, and then I would take a 3 damage Hellblaster and shoot it right back into the succubus's face. That was fun.
Okay.
And
All right, interesting. So,
go ahead.
no, I'd say so this list is tailored specifically to fight Drukhari, in that like the height of the Drukhari's 75% win rate meta. All right, interesting.
Awesome.
And I did take it to another GT, and I ended up going against, I can't remember what it was. It was like Chaos Big Things type, and I just couldn't kill anyone. So there was drawbacks to the list for sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, I see you have Assault Intercessors in there. What was up with the Assault Intercessors? Because I personally love that unit.
Oh, yeah.
But I can't get it to do the amount of damage without like Righteous Repugnance.
Yeah, so honestly, just cheapest troop slot possible for the most
Fair
part.
enough.
And the reason I wanted Assault Intercessors is because they're good into Drukhari specifically, because all you need is AP 1/1 damage into Witches and especially like Succubi, like that's really all you need or want because they have a 4-up 4-up.
Yeah.
And like basically what I would do with them is they would kind of blanket the back of the pocket so that I couldn't get charged from behind. And if they were going to charge me, it's just Assault Intercessors, so no big deal. And so they would hold up the backs of the bubble where everything is essentially in, or they would hold back objectives, but that was pretty rare because they're so easy to kill. And I use their fight twice stratagem once in a while because like I'd get engaged with something and then they wouldn't be able to kill me, and then I would use it twice. It was literally just for Drukhari though.
Okay. All right. Interesting. And so 10 Relic Terminators with Storm Bolter's Lightning Claws, and then 9 Blade Guard and 3 squads of 3. Right? Then a Talon Master. So, if you're saying that the strategy is to bubble everything up in one place, how do you play hold 2, hold 3 missions?
I usually throw random 3-man Blade Guard squads on the flanks, and because they have Transhuman all the time, people really struggle to kill them, especially if they're behind Obscuring or in cover or something.
Yeah, in cover with a 0 save, yeah.
Yep, so I would use those as my throwaway, and then I had some bikes. I don't remember if I have 1 or 2 units, maybe 1 unit of attack bikes.
Yes, there's 3 attack bikes with multi-meltas, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd use those as kind of my outlier assets, but the majority of the army wants to Octopus off of the Apothecary and Azrael, so they're kind of in the center of the pocket, and then I shoot tendrils off onto things. It's very similar to how I played the Terminator list. Later on, it was just a different nucleus.
Okay. Well, in that case, how do you change with the meta to get to LVO? As like attack bikes got more expensive, Drukhari got nerfed a little bit, Admech got nerfed.
Yeah, so I stopped playing the Terminators for a while because I switched to Drukhari for a short period and like a 4-week period, and then I did that with Admech, and then again, those might have just been the 2. I played Tyranids for like a weekend just to pick up their rules.
Yeah.
But I switched off of them because I personally felt that full MSU Drukhari just dumpstered them. It was when Admech came out, that's what happened, is that my ACO list, because it couldn't survive Admech, it walks out and instantly everything dies.
Not much can.
Exactly. It wasn't worth the time and effort to try to stay with that army, and I was just really disappointed in how my rules were played into Admech at the time, so I just decided to play Drukhari, and the way I played Drukhari, I never lost to Admech, so it made me a lot happier. So I just kind of spent a month or 2 just bouncing around other armies. And then when Admech got toned down again, I came back to my Dark Angels, and that's when I built my current, a slightly similar iteration of my current army, which changed very, very slightly from then until LVO.
Okay, so your LVO list, from what I've got, is basically Oops All Terminators, with a couple of support characters. Can you talk us through like how you got there?
Yeah, so it kind of just was like, look, if I have, it was orcs. Orcs is what really did it. If you have
the buggies, the buggies.
Yep. So if you have any outlying assets at all, they're just dead, and then the orcs proc their +1 to hit. So why not just give them absolutely nothing? And that's what I was doing. Is I put the command squad up in deep strike, maybe a couple extra Terminators here and there, present Terminator bodies in cover, and hopefully behind Obscuring, hopefully with -1 to hit, whatever. And that was my response to that. So that was the primary reason for having all Terminators and nothing else. And then I just kind of leaned into it after that because I only start with 6 CP. So I was like, do I really want to drop 2 CP just to get other assets into my army when I know I can do what I need to with the Terminators? And so I just started playing the Terminators slightly differently, where I would just throw away 5-mans when I had to, and that kind of fixed my problems with not having assets. So I just stuck with it.
So when you say throw away 5-mans, I take it that you would combat squad one or multiple of these three big 10-man, right? So you just combat squad all 3 of them.
I have 4 10-mans. One of them's Relic. I combat squad the Relics every single game.
Relics, yeah.
And then I combat squad 2 more of the squads, and I almost always, I think there's one game where I didn't, leave the 10-man as one big brick to accept the -1 damage and walk into the middle, essentially.
Okay.
Okay.
And basically, it played very similar to how my ACO list played, where it's just a front of 10 with -1 damage, and the rest of the army is a nucleus behind that 10-man, and then I octopus off of that nucleus onto objectives, so that I have every single buff in my army on every single Terminator.
Okay. Ever considered playing something to get like a fight's last ability, like a Calexis Assassin?
Or Ezekiel.
Or Zeke?
Yeah, I ran into several problems trying to fit fight last in my army. So, essentially, every single character in that list is very important, and I can't drop a single one. The only CP that was flexible was the Relic on the Champion, which is a Mastercrafted. That was just a waste of 1 CP. I just like him having damage 3 rather than damage 2. Every single other Warlord trait and Relic was for a very specific purpose that I could not move off of, and if I tried to move off of them, the list just collapsed. So I stopped trying, essentially. And I'll explain that a little bit further just so it makes sense. So the Chaplain is the +2 to charge, right?
Yes.
That's his main purpose.
The Chaplain with a jump pack, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
His main purpose is to proc the +2 to charge. He has a bunch of other utility, but that's most of it. He also is giving damage buffs, but it's really the +2 to charge. Then the Apothecary Resing is another movement trick, because you can get 4.5 to 5.5 inches out of movement out of it, depending on how you manipulate it. And the Champion is rerolling charges. So those 3 just together are all for movement. That's like, my Terminators are super slow, right? So I combat that by giving them movement buffs. And I would start with that like 10-man right here. My Chaplain would jump over the top, land, deep strike 20-ish Terminators, sometimes less, sometimes... No, never more than 20. It was always 20 or less. And then I would charge them in on a 7-inch charge re-rolling out of deep strike, which people weren't usually ready for. And then because my Chaplain is super flexible and can move around, he's giving them +3s to pylons and consolidates. So I would smash into that front screen. It really didn't matter what it was. And then I would pylon and consolidate and touch every single shooting asset in the army is how a lot of games worked.
So, I think the common wisdom about Dark Angels is that they just play non-interactive, Oath of Moment, Stubborn Defiance, and that doesn't sound like what you're doing here.
No. I would still take Stubborn occasionally, but I really didn't like it, because for me it's incredibly dangerous to be playing with Stubborn. I only did it when I felt like I had to. Otherwise, I would vastly prefer taking Strangle as my first option, because it's so easy to do with Dark Angel Terminators. And then I moved to unexpectedly behind enemy lines, which was weird, and I wouldn't score more than 10 points on it most games, but it was just better for me than trying to maintain Stubborn, because I could have my whole army swim forward instead of kind of trailing buffs onto the back point, because without buffs, the Terminators just die. Like, they die like everyone else. So I had to keep them kind of chained in ways that they would survive, and Stubborn just made that way harder to do.
So... Stranglehold, potentially behind enemy lines. Those are both Battlefield Supremacy. What are your other 2 go-tos?
So Oath While We Stand. I really prefer not playing While We Stand, so almost every single game was Oath. While We Stand was Dire Circumstances. Like, I tried it a couple times against Crusher, because you try anything against Crusher. But yeah, sorry, I forgot what I was talking about because I just thought of Crusher.
No. No worries, I understand. Your go-to secondaries for this list, I think, once again, the conventional wisdom for Deathwing Terminators is Stubborn Defiance, Oath of Moment, you shoot me, I don't care, whatever it is. But
and then Mission Specific was key in a lot of games. Like I would like Prio, Search and Destroy. There's just some options there. And then Banners was always a big one. If I could get Banners done, I would raise Banners and then splash past them and leave them there. And people sometimes that's matchup dependent, because if they have fast assets, I can't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Abhor the Witch came up occasionally. That third one was very flexible, to be honest, and every once in a while it wouldn't be very good.
Okay.
So you're
Alright,
not worried
interesting.
about the move to the new GT book then, because that was something Heath and I have been talked about recently on our podcast, was the fact you can't take Oaths and Stubborn together anymore, which has been the conventional wisdom, but that doesn't. This sounds like your strategy's GT 2022 proof.
Yeah, I actually think that the new mission packet is better for me in a variety of different ways. And I am not at all concerned about losing Stubborn and Oath together. It was one option among many, and I did take it occasionally, but it just pushes me back into the playstyle I'd rather be playing anyway.
Awesome. That's really good. Okay. Well, along the same lines, so you're not concerned about the change in secondaries for GT 2022. Do you see a lot of stuff in GT 22 is very troops battlefield role specific? Do you see that being an issue for you?
I have OBSEC, which cuts through some of that because some of those rules are OBSEC linked instead of troops linked. The troops specific one is definitely a problem. I am choosing to wait and see for the most part with that. I think I have other meta boons, like the fact that Tao's indirect shooting is going to ruin just so many people's lives, and it really does nothing to Terminator. I think that the list will overall be scoring less high, but I think everyone will be scoring less high. So my initial reaction is that I don't think it'll be a problem at all, and it'll be a bigger problem for a lot of other armies than it is for me, especially because I play primary so well, and primary is just harder to come by now. I haven't done that in practice yet, though, so we'll see how that ends up shaping up.
Excellent.
Okay. So, if you're going to provide any advice to a new Dark Angels player who's just trying to start out, what would that be? What do you think some, like, the crutch or the trap units from that book look like?
I would say do not play the Terminators to start. I would say play anything but them. It depends on if you've been playing the game for a while, just do the Terminators because they're fun, and they're like the hardest army I've ever played by far, because it's so slow. Like, you have to use every trick in your book to get them to move around the board at speed, and you have to be being careful of all these aura measurements all the time and stuff like that. So it's a really frustrating army to play, and I got in just an intense amount of reps in it to be able to like exploit it the way that I did. So I would tell people to look at like my Atlantic City list and build a tri-wing list that kind of played two or three of the phases and has some shooting, because without shooting you can't fix any mistakes you make. So I would lean probably further into the Raven Wing and some of the shootier elements and get Azrael in there and then move from there, because it's just the Terminators are not fun right when you start with them because they just frustrate you.
Yeah, you need absolute precision with all the +3, consolidate pile and the +2 charge. Yeah, I feel you on that. Okay, interesting.
So to get better as a Dark Angels player, then would you suggest as you go on to get like a deeper understanding of the fight phase? Because from what you're saying with the additional pylons and consolidates, having a deep understanding of the cohesion and pylon rules would be good. So that'd be something for someone to focus on.
Yes, absolutely. I would just start with maybe a 10 brick of Terminators and playing with them and see how they move and feel them out first, because they're kind of strange. And then I would move to more and more Terminators as you feel more comfortable with them. I just worry that people try just putting 42 Terminators down and they're like, wait, it's really slow and it can't score points. And it's like, yeah, that's true. It takes a lot of work to get them to do what you want. And I think it's just more enjoyable to start with a little bit less of that and having more guns, because more guns fix the mistakes that the Terminators are making.
So I just want to go back real quick. You said that you would normally deep strike about half this list. So you start with like your relic Terminators on the board and another 10-man unit Terminators on the board, combat squatted, and then you drop 2 full 10-man units with your chaplain and your champion on turn 2.
Chaplain stays on the board because he's using his jump pack to get forward. The champion is dropping down with 4 squads, all 5-mans, because I'm combat squatting them.
Okay.
and I'm putting the relic terminators in reserves most of the time so that they get angles, because they're so slow it's impossible to get angles in shooting. So that's my only guns in the entire list. So I throw those bolters up into the reserves, and they drop down, and if I feel strongly about killing something, they'll pop +1 to hit, +1 to wound, which they can only do out of reserves. And I've used those strat combo about 20 times, and it's been worth it twice. So it's like 10% of the time. So I do not recommend using it.
Okay, good to know.
But it is nice getting those shooting on like cultists or whatever have you that's off in the corners, and having the flexibility to do that just out of reserves is kind of nice. But the vast majority of the time, I was walking forward as a group, and then jumping over the top with the apothecary goes through, and the chaplain jumps over the top, and then everyone drops down and everything charges. And
all right.
7-inch charge rerolling is an 80-some% likelihood, so you got it on about 4 out of 5 units.
Nice.
And when you're doing it with 4 units, you're gonna make 3 of them probably.
Exactly. So and you can accept 2 of them missing. It's not that big of a deal, because then they're just sitting there, lookout sirring and getting their feel no pain, and they charge the next turn.
What's the stuff that gives this list a problem?
Crusher was right before LVO. It was super disappointing. Crusher came out and was like, hey, all those cool rules you got, we do them better. We out-obsec you on any point that we choose. We reroll the wound. We fight on death. We do mortal wounds out the hizzy. Like, they just came in and really wrecked this list in a big way. It's really only the T8 version, the Hyrule version. Any other version that people came up with, I could just walk through. But the Hyrule's tar pit as many Terminators as they want to tar pit, because you never kill them and they never kill you. Unless they get lucky, but you definitely never kill them. I've charged 25 Terminators fully buffed into a Hyrule and not killed it.
Oh wow!
Good, and that's with it having a 5-up invuln, because I have my apothecary boost negate one of the invulns. But yeah, no, I just stopped trying to kill them because it's just a waste of time. But the Hyrule version, I was like beating my head on a brick wall. Every other version I walked through, and then MSU Jukari, which is what I ran into on LVO, presents a massive problem for the list because it's just too fast.
That was Junior Flahy, right?
Absolutely, a great guy, super fun opponent. But he played MSU Jukari well. He got first turn, which was a bummer for me. I wanted first, and then I misplayed on the first turn, failed to charge, and when you misplay on the first turn and fail charge in that matchup, it's pretty fatal, because then they can just start backing up after that. Yeah.
Well, so did Custodes or Genestealer Cult change any of your plans for LVO?
Nope. The Genestealer Cults was definitely another one where I was like, I'm probably going to lose that one. But I was planning on taking top Dark Angels, so I was going to bring the best Dark Angel list I could, and I did, and I was fine with accepting losing to Crusher, MSU Jukari, and probably Genestealer Cults. I thought I could smash Custodians, but I wasn't 100% sure about that. I never ended up playing them, so I'm not 100% sure to this day.
I also play Custodians on the side a little bit. My kind of read is that, well, they get a lot of high strength stuff and 2 damage, which is the things that Dark Angel Terminators just literally do not care about.
Yep.
Right? And the fact that they can negate your rerolls and get their own transhuman, okay, well, we get +1 to hit if we don't move, and we can get 3 damage. So I don't think that's a bad matchup for us. What do you think about Tau moving forward? You said all their indirect fire, you're not really that concerned about. Railguns concern you at all?
No, I think Tau is a situation like a lot of shooting armies. Like, it's almost like you're playing against Necrons. Their just guns are way better. The Tau meta list that I've been seeing kind of starting to creep up, at least here in Minnesota, is ignore AP -1 and 2 on the charge, which is obviously not great for us because everything's AP2. So I just wait till turn 3 until everything's in the Devastator doctrine, waiting behind Obscure and drop in charge, tag as much stuff as you can, and move from there. But I'm not really sure. I haven't really had a lot of time to test that one out. My instinct tells me because they're a shooting army, I'm going to beat them.
Nice.
Okay. What about Eldar? I've been seeing a lot of the Eldar stuff, and that's
how I feel about Eldar.
Eldar, yeah, that's Eldar.
It's not going good. It's going to be terrible.
Yeah.
Doom and Jinx was a sneaky bad one for us in this whole edition. No one was worrying about Craftworld Eldars. I was kind of like, I don't really want to deal with that. One of my good friends, Connor, he's playing Dark Angels right now, Terminators, and 2 floors below me. But he was playing an Eldar list that would beat this Terminator list routinely. So that was always kind of a problematic matchup for me, and I assume we'll just get a whole lot worse when this new codex comes out.
Those fire dragons with 3 flat damage plus and 5 flat damage if they're close to you and auto hitting. Yeah, there's a lot of concern about it with Craftable Lolar. So I don't know the full picture of it yet. But we got a wily Craftworld player in my local meta who's been playing for 35 years. So,
oh man,
old age and treachery I'm sure is gonna reveal some things to me about that. But well, I know you said you had some limited time, so you got any final thoughts?
No, I'm just happy you guys are doing this. I guess I do, yeah. I'm glad you guys are doing this podcast because, like, I hear the internet kind of not being super nice to Dark Angels, especially, like, in the last 6 Codex drops or whatever. They feel like they've really fallen off. And, like, I don't necessarily think they're, like, A or S tier by any means, but I think that the biggest strength in the Dark Angels is that they can play in almost everything and have a game. It's not going to be super easy. It's always going to be kind of difficult, but, like, if you know your rules really well and you really practice with the list, I think that you can beat anything. And like the 3 lists I said will give you problems, but everything else, if you play it right, I personally believe you can beat if you give yourself enough time and practice. And boy, is the army beautiful and fun to play, and the lore is great, and I just love it. It's my favorite army right now. We'll see if that stays. I'm hoping it does.
Yeah, I said Dark Angels were my first army. I've been playing this game for just about 20 years. So that's where I started. So, all right, man. Bailey, got anything to add?
No, that works for me. So, thank you all for listening. Thank you for joining us, Charlie, to this special episode of The Path to Redemption, the Warhammer 40,000 Dark Angels podcast. Our regular monthly episode is yet to come out, so come back and check us out in a few weeks and see if Heath and I completed our monthly hobby projects. Please subscribe, like, and comment below if you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on your preferred podcasting service. And last but not least, we'd like to thank Purple Planet for the use of their music. Until next time, I'm Bailey from Dank Wargaming.
This is Heath, the Table of Hawaii.
Stay loyal, Angels.